In this video, we're going to rank every NBA team starting shooting guard. Coming into this exercise, I thought shooting guard might be the weakest position across the NBA from a depth perspective. And now that I've gone through it, I'm not totally sure if I still believe that, but I can say definitively it is not as deep as the point guard position, which is the position that we ranked in the last video. And as a reminder, or if you didn't watch that video, these rankings are coming as kind of a combination of like how talented the player is, as well as how good I think that the GM of that team feels about their starting shooting guard situation, which in some cases means projecting who that starter is going to be. Like, subscribe, and let's get into it. At 30, I've got Jordan Poole with the Washington Wizards. Was there ever a case of a guy who was handed a situation that was uniquely designed for them and have it go as wrong as it did for Jordan Poole last year? He goes from a system where he shined as a gunner on a title team, literally knocked out of favor, and ends up on a team with no superstar to share the floor with, no reasonable expectations for winning any games, no pressure at all, and he was really the best young talent that they knew they had. The Wizards would have been perfectly fine with him scoring 30 a game on 30 shots, and it didn't happen. It was basically a disaster, and he's locked up, like, for a while. At 29, give me the Charlotte Hornets with Josh Green. A throw-in to the massive 6-team Klay Thompson sign-and trade, Josh Green could have a chance to surprise some people in Charlotte. He also could get buried on the bench and become a complete afterthought. I like him, I don't love him, and I don't know how you can have any idea at this point in time how the Hornets are going to feel about him as their starting shooting guard, but he seems to be their best option for now. At 28, I've got the Detroit Pistons with Jaden Ivey. I have to hope that the Pistons like Jaden Ivey more than Monty Williams did, and JB Bickerstaff should be leaning into him and Cade as the future of this backcourt. But with Tobias Harris back in town now, they brought in Malik Beasley, Simone Fontecchio, and what do they ultimately do positionally with Ausar Thompson? While I would start Ivey at the 2, I'm not sure what they're planning to do, or if they have a plan at all. At 27, I've got Gary Trent Jr. with the Bucks. In what might be the steal of the offseason, I really like the idea of Gary Trent Jr. in Milwaukee. I think he's a better player than some of the guys ahead of him on this list, but I think you can only feel so good about it as the Bucks, given that he's probably a rental, playing for a bigger contract that he's going to get somewhere else after next season. Going into next season, it's pretty good for the options that they had. 26, I've got Christian Braun with the Denver Nuggets. I've said in other videos that I'm not a fan of what the Nuggets are doing. I think their championship window has closed because of the way that they've not been willing to spend to keep their title contender together. And what was once a very deep team, perfectly built around Jokic, is now betting on development and youth to make up all of their depth and complementary roles around that core 4. Christian Braun starting at the shooting guard is the epitome of that issue. I really like this kid as an energy-boosting role player coming off the bench. I don't like him as the starting shooting guard responsible for guarding the other team's best perimeter player full-time and space the floor for Jokic. I think their front office disagrees with me though, or they're at least saying so, to cover up their frustration for ownership not being willing to spend. At 25, I've got the Indiana Pacers with Andrew Nembhard. Nembhard made a really nice impression in the playoffs and got himself paid, which is awesome. I think he's really good. But I think if you ask the Pacers, they'd probably like him better as a backup point guard and a spark next to Tyrese Halliburton in stretches than starting at the 2. But I'm also not sure that Ben Mathurin isn't best suited at this point in his career, coming off of a major injury, as a 6th man scorer off the bench, which leaves them in a spot to sort of pick which one they prefer to be that guy and which one starts going into next year. At 24, I've got the LA Clippers' Terrence Mann. With Paul George gone, I think Terrence Mann is a beneficiary and may finally solidify his role a little bit. He's had a weird run with the Clippers as a guy who's just a solid, versatile wing player trying to navigate life playing with superstars that are consistently in and out of the lineup. I think he starts at the 2 now and is a set-it-and-forget-it serviceable option to do it. Even if he isn't amazing, he should be solid. At 23, I've got the Kings' Kevin Huerter. Will the real Kevin Huerter please stand up? With DeMar DeRozan now the third star in Sacramento, spacing is going to be a premium for this team, which means guys like Huerter and Keegan Murray need to be the ones to provide that spacing. In Huerter's case, we've seen him do that at multiple times in his career where he's had multiple seasons of 38 to 40% shooting from three on real volume. But last year's regression to 36% was a legit problem for the Kings. They need the 40% guy that he's been before, not the 36% guy that we just saw. At 22, I've got Cam Thomas from the Nets. I don't really know what to do with Cam Thomas. The guy is a bucket, and he's going to have the opportunity to get so many buckets on the complete tank job that is the Brooklyn Nets. Is he a starting two guard as an ideal role in the NBA? On a good team? I don't think so. But on this team, they probably feel pretty good about a young bucket getter putting up some exciting stat games that they lose by 20 as they race for ping pong balls heading into a draft that should have multiple options for real difference-making talents that are worth tanking for. At 21, it's RJ Barrett with the Toronto Raptors. RJ Barrett is good at basketball. He was good for the Raptors after the trade. Is he great at basketball? Well, great enough to be an NBA starting caliber player, but not great enough to make the Raptors feel like they've got their starting shooting guard of the future. But for now, he's good. At 20, I've got the Bulls with Zach LaVine, and I don't know how good I feel about it. We know about the sheer talent that Zach LaVine possesses. He's more talented than a lot of guys that are ahead of him on this list. We also know about the injury concerns and the contract that have made him seemingly impossible to trade, which the Bulls have been trying to do. How good can they feel about him being their starting shooting guard with that being the case? At 19, give me the Rockets' Jalen Green. Another good young bucket getter, but not higher on the list because he's not clear in how effective he's going to be as a long-term piece of a team that's clearly on the come up and has a desire to play winning basketball. He's young enough to have hope and be excited, but he's also been inefficient enough to have questions and concerns. At 18, I've got the Warriors' Buddy Hield. Buddy Hield doesn't have the sheer talent of some of the guys that are behind him on this list, but what he is one of the best three-point shooters in history that's walking into a situation where he's replacing another one of the best three-point shooters in history, and he gets to play alongside the best three-point shooter in history. He has flaws, he has limitations, but I think it's an advantageous spot for him to do what he does, and that the front office is probably pretty happy to have brought him in to replicate a version of what Klay Thompson was giving them at this point in his career. Is it great? No. Is it a way better than it could have been for both parties type of situation? Yep. At 17, the Atlanta Hawks, Bogdan Bogdanović. I like Bogey. I think the Hawks like Bogey. But I've said before, I don't feel like I have a good sense for what the Hawks are trying to do. If it's keeping this core together again, then I don't think that their summer made any sense. If it's restocking and prioritizing youth around Trae Young, then I don't think they're finished. And Bogey should probably be on the move. But he's still good. At 16, it's Marcus Smart with the Memphis Grizzlies. I have no idea what to make of Marcus Smart in Memphis because we saw next to nothing from it last season. He only played 20 games last year. Ja Morant only played 9. The whole team ended up decimated by injuries, and now we're just left with the idea that was bringing in Smart in the first place to pair with Ja in the backcourt. But now they're both coming off of big injuries, and Smart's going to be turning 30, so middle of the pack feels safe, I guess. At 15, I've got Tyler Hero with the Miami Heat. Another case of talent not aligning with their spot on the list. I might be in the minority at this point, but I actually still think that Tyler Hero is a good basketball player. But how can you feel any level of confidence in him playing a healthy season when he's basically never done it? Add in the defensive issues and some of the efficiency stuff, and I don't know that the Heat are stoked about their guy, but they probably still like the idea of what he could be, particularly as a shooting guard, given that he's a 20-point per game scorer and only turning 25. At 14, I've got KCP in Orlando. The Nuggets' loss is the Magic's gain. I really like the idea of Kentavious Caldwell-Pope in Orlando with the Magic. A backcourt of him and Jalen Suggs is going to wreak havoc defensively. He's a 40% three-point shooter. I'd honestly have him higher on the list probably, but there are some concerns in the advanced stats that I don't absolutely love, but I think the Magic do because they just paid him like a nice healthy chunk of change to bring him in. At 13, I've got the Blazers' Anthony Simons. I don't totally know what to make of Simons in Portland. He's only 25, so it's not like he can't be valuable in a rebuild, but he's also a small shooting guard who can't really guard, and I think the Blazers' ideal preference would be a long-term backcourt of Scoot and Shaedon Sharpe. But there are teams in a lot worse spots than having a 25-year-old 22-point-per-game scorer that shoots 38% from three, taking almost 10 a night. At 12, I've got Devin Vassell with the San Antonio Spurs. I feel good about Devin Vassell being a guy that the Spurs see value in long term. He's only turning 24. He might end up playing more 3 than 2, but I think going into next year at least, this is probably his spot. I also think he's going to benefit from having Chris Paul around because there will now be an adult who knows how to put guys in position to be successful running their offense. He needs to stay healthy though, something that he hasn't been able to do yet. At 11, I've got Colin Sexton with the Utah Jazz. One of the most underrated players of the past couple of years, I believe, has been Colin Sexton in Utah. He got a bit of a reputation in Cleveland as an inefficient scorer, but he's upped his three-point percentage to 39% each of the last 2 seasons, and he doubled his volume last year to a respectable 4 attempts per game, and he's basically a 50-40-85 guys in his time in Utah. He also had his best year as a distributor last year at 5 assists per game while still scoring over 18 a night in what is a pretty crowded backcourt. He's only turning 26 this year, and with the Jazz keeping Lauri Markkanen around, I could see them being very happy to keep Sexton as well. If not, he should be a coveted trade target at the deadline. To kick off the top 10, I've got Austin Reeves with the LA Lakers. I've said a bunch of times now that one of the biggest problems the Lakers had last year is that they bet on Austin Reeves becoming a 3rd star, and he didn't do it. That doesn't mean he isn't good though. I still think he's the most valuable trade asset on the Lakers roster, even if he isn't as valuable as they seem to think he is, which is untouchable. At 9, I've got the Thunder's Alex Caruso. The irony of the one that got away for the Lakers falling here on the list, but Caruso is just such a valuable player to have and such a perfect fit into what the Thunder are trying to do. An all-defense guy who's upped his three-point shooting to 40% last year for the Bulls while managing to play over 70 games for the first time in his career. Honestly, he'd be even higher on this list if he shot more and there weren't the health concerns. At 8, I've got the New Orleans Pelicans' CJ McCollum. This might not be the most popular pick at this spot. I think there's a perception out there that CJ sucks at basketball now, but I don't agree with that. I think he's simply been miscast a bit during his time in New Orleans. Yes, he's a small guard about to turn 33, and no, he's not a point guard. He tried to fill that role for the Pels who needed a point guard, but that's not really his game, and what he is a guy who's averaged 20 plus in 11 straight seasons, a 40% three-point shooter on significant volume, and by all accounts, a great leader for this locker room. Here's the rub though. Bringing in DeJounte Murray, I think is going to be great for CJ, allowing him to lean into his natural playing style, but because of the Herb Jones, Brandon Ingram, Trey Murphy logjam on the wing, I think long-term CJ ends up being a microwave of all microwaves as a 6th man, but I'm not sure that they're going to start the year that way. At 7, give me the Boston Celtics' Derek White. Champion, gold medalist Derek White, that is. He does everything, an incredible defender, invaluable to the Celtics in every way imaginable. He's great, they're stoked, and he just got paid. At 6, I've got Tyrese Maxey with the Philadelphia 76ers. I hope by the time I do this next offseason that Tyrese Maxey won't be here. And by that, I mean he'll be on the point guard list. I hope that the Sixers will have found a better option, allowing Maxey to start at point guard for them by next offseason. But as I said in the last video, I don't see that on the roster right now. And rather than holding up production of this video until the Sixers make a possible move that would bring in a more obvious choice, I'm moving forward with the placeholder of a Kyle Lowry, Tyrese Maxey starting backcourt. Also, as long as Maxey is in that backcourt, they're happy because he's awesome. At 5, I've got Mikal Bridges with the Knicks. This is more of a what I think Tibbs is going to do rather than what I think the Knicks should do. But when I dug into the lineup data for the Knicks last year, I couldn't find a single minute that Tom Thibodeau played Julius Randle without a traditional center next to him. That leads me to believe that they're going to run out with a starting five of Brunson, Bridges, OG, Randle, and a center, probably Mitchell Robinson. Until I see otherwise, that is what I'm assuming. And if they do that, then Bridges is a top 5 shooting guard because of his size and his two-way ability. Even if I personally would probably start him at the 3. At number 4, I've got the Cavs' Donovan Mitchell. Remember when Donovan Mitchell was getting MVP votes in that Bontemps straw poll in January? He reminded us that he's also a beast in the playoffs, dragging the Cavs to the second round, and now he's signed on for at least a couple more years in Cleveland, which is something that should make this front office the third happiest it's ever been about a player on their roster. First being drafting LeBron James, and the second being getting LeBron James back. Third, though, re-signing Donovan Mitchell. At number 3, the Phoenix Suns and Devin Booker. Devin Booker might have the prettiest jump shot in basketball, in my opinion, and he's part of one of the best duos in the league with him and KD. If he defended like he did in the Olympics, and I wasn't worried about him staying healthy, he's probably actually number 2 on this list, but I mean, how bad is 3? So at 2 on the list, I've got Anthony Edwards with the Timberwolves. What's not to love about Ant? There might not be a player in the league that brings me more joy to watch than Anthony Edwards. He's the whole package you want in a young superstar, and he has that edge to him to compete on both ends of the floor, which is something that I value a ton in my rankings of players personally. Also, the Wolves couldn't be happier. And that leaves for number 1, Luka Doncic with the Dallas Mavericks. I explained this in my last video, but I'll say it quickly here again because you probably didn't watch it. I understand that on offense, Luka acts as the point guard initiating the offense, but he's also 6'7", 230, and if he's guarding a point guard, it's a switch gone wrong. And as long as he's sharing the court with Kyrie Irving, who is a point guard size player who happens to be really good at playing off of a ball dominant superstar, I'm going to still write them down on paper as Kyrie being the 1 and Luka being the 2. But regardless of which list you decide that you're going to put Luka on, he's going to be at the top of it. He's an MVP candidate and a generational offensive player, and these positions are, let's call them loose to say the least in today's NBA. My question for you in the comments is, what NBA franchise is happiest about their starting shooting guard situation? And while you're typing that in the comments section, go ahead and hit the like button on the video so that YouTube knows it doesn't suck, and subscribe to the channel so that I know you want me to keep making more of them.